Welcome to the Heavy Spoilers Show. I'm your host Paul. In this video we're breaking down The Ring. Over the last week or so, I've burned through the original Japanese trilogy, the non-canon sequel Spiral, and the American remake, obsessing over the tape. If I'm dead in 7 days, then you know what happened, but like the characters in the movie, it was difficult to stop myself. I think The Ring's one of the most unforgettable horrors of all time, and that final scene is forever burned into my memory. Now, I was actually someone that saw the remake before the original, and I didn't get around to watching that until years later. However, it opened up the well and made me become fascinated with the genre, with the original trilogy becoming one of my favourites of all time. Throughout this video, we'll be doing a deep dive on both Ringu and its American counterpart to talk about all the creepy details that are layered in the films. This will also talk about the ending and where they differ, putting together the major differences and things that they changed. If you enjoyed the video, then please hit the thumbs up button, and also don't forget to subscribe for breakdowns like this every week. If you don't, then in the next 7 days, you'll not see the next one. So yeah, please do that, mate, and thanks for the support. Now, Ringu was a movie that massively changed cinema, and it subverted things away from the slashers that had been dominant for decades. Its reach has since been felt far and wide, with it influencing several forms of media since its creation. Whether it's stuff like The Curse and It Follows, the Fear games, or even the Grudge movies, a ghost girl with long black hair is now a staple in horror. It paved the way for America remaking Japanese horrors for years to follow, and basically opened the door for a whole new subset of films. Based on the 1991 novel Ring, it saw a reporter trying to get to the bottom of a cursed videotape that, once watched, would kill you in 7 days. Now, the book actually took a little bit of inspiration from Poltergeist, with its author recounting how the idea of a ghost coming from a TV was something that always stuck with him. His name was Koji Suzuki, and he also went on to make another classic in Darkwater, which too had a film adaptation and an American remake. Now, Sadako's psychic abilities, they're actually based on a form of spirit photography, which in Japan is known as Nensha. This allows one to burn images from their mind onto a solid surface, which in the movie is how the character creates the videotape. She also takes inspiration from the Japanese legend of the Okyo, which apparently originates from Himeji Castle. According to the legends, there was a servant girl who was tortured and dangled over the well at the castle before being dunked into it, where she was left. In the days following, her screams could be heard coming from the well, and after she died, her spirit rose from it in order to exact revenge. The title itself has different interpretations as well, with it possibly having multiple meanings laced throughout both films. Rings are of course circles that move in a cycle, and the tape itself acts like a virus being spread to whoever watches it. Upon seeing the tape, your phone also rings, and the view from the well Sadako was trapped in appears like a ring too. Rings also appear throughout both versions, which we'll be pointing out as we get further into the video. Now, this idea of cycles was continued in the now non-canonized sequel, which was called Spiral. This actually comes on the Ring 2 Blu-ray released by Arrow, and it actually had a bit of a weird release. Spiral came out in the same year as Ringu did, so you could literally finish the film and then go and see its sequel. It has them actually examining how Sadako's curse is like a virus, and it creates a new one that you get by reading journals studying the tape. The Ring then spirals out of control, and we end with several of the characters resurrected, talking about how it's going to evolve humanity. Honestly, I can see why it was dropped from the canon, as Ring 2's by far the superior sequel that feels more in the same vein as that tone in the original. Also, we've actually just teamed up with Arrow Films as a partner, and if you're into these older films, then definitely go check out our link in the description. You'll get 10% off any purchase, and like I said, they've got the Ring collection, RoboCop 4K, The Exorcist, and a ton of older films rescanned and upgraded to 4K. Again, the link is in the description, and it massively helps out the channel. Click it below or use the code HEAVYSPOILERS at the checkout for 10% off. Now, it's hard to imagine how much of a success this film was at the time, but to give you an idea, it was the highest grossing horror film in Japanese history. Now, obviously, Hollywood being Hollywood, they wanted a piece of this too, which in the end turned out to be a pretty smart decision. The movie made $249 million off a $48 million budget, and in just the US alone, it did bonkers numbers on DVD. It sold 2 million in the first 24 hours of its release, and it was a phenomenon that built off the back of more supernatural low-key films like The Blair Witch Project. Now for the next part of the video, I'll be going through the ring scene by scene and talking about all the extra details in it that you might not have picked up. Amongst this, I'll also talk about Ringu and some of the bits that differ or the details in it that didn't make it to the US version. The films basically have the exact same plot with a couple of character changes, but I think the best way to tackle both movies is just in one breakdown. If you're looking for what one you should watch, then I think Ringu's the better film, and that's due to its atmosphere, characters, and general tone of it. On the other side of this though, the US version has way better effects, and even comparing the two final scenes side by side, you can see where the extra money comes into play. Due to them remaking the movie, it also gave them a lot more hindsight, and because of this they were able to add a lot more subliminal images and foreshadowing throughout. Like I said, there's rings laced throughout, and that comes from the off with the DreamWorks logo. If you look very close, not that closely, but if you look closely, you will see the ring flicker on screen when we hit the D. From here we cut to an establishing shot of a house, and the first thing you're probably going to notice is the green filter of the top of it. This is throughout the entire film, and I totally forgot this movie's greener than a Matrix film. Now, this is obviously a choice, they didn't do it by accident, and the creative team put it in place so that the movie had an unnatural feeling to it. Kinda makes you feel sick a bit, and according to IMDb trivia, they also lit the entire thing so that characters don't actually have a shadow. Gives a feeling that something's not quite right, which we get immediately from the off. The opening shot also begins with a heavy focus on a withered tree, which itself becomes an icon laced throughout the film. The tree is known as a Japanese maple, and the fruit that grows from it is called a Samara. Samara Morgan is the name of the girl in the US adaptation, with the Japanese one being called Sadako. I will probably jump back and forth between the names, so bear that in mind, and Rachel's character is called Raiku in the original. Rachel's ex is called Noah, whereas in Ringu he's called Ryuji, and their son Aiden is called Yoichi. Butchered the pronunciation on those, but the first line in the remake is pretty witty.
I hate television. Gives me headaches.
Now this opening is very similar to how the original began, with us getting two schoolgirls talking about the tape. This is very reminiscent of the opening of Screen, which again is kinda building off the back of the slasher genre, but going somewhere new. Here they're wearing Japanese uniforms, and this was done on purpose as a tribute to Ringu. In that we learn what actually caused the tape to be created, and hear of a cabin in Izu where a boy tried to tape a sports game. Selecting the wrong channel, he left the VCR running, and when he watched the tape it had the strange images on it. This is what then started off the curse, and we learned Sadako's well was located right underneath the cabin. Here, they kinda skip over the story, and instead go for some conspiracy theory stuff about radio waves burning the molecules in your brain.
I heard there's so many magnetic waves traveling through the air because of TV and telephones that we're losing like 10 times as many brain cells as we're supposed to. Like, all the molecules in our heads are all unstable. All the companies know about it, but they're not doing anything about it. It's like a big conspiracy.
The book was originally written to be more of a science fiction one, with it later becoming more in line with a horror. The sequel Spiral leaned more in line with that, and the science here could be something that explains how the characters are killed. The movie's often thought to be a metaphor for technophobia, with screens and technology being twisted to take human life. The Japanese version framed a lot of the TVs to be like shadowy screens watching the protagonists, and they're often placed in the corners of rooms, pointed directly at the characters. What do you mean that's the best way to watch TV? Nah, but you'll understand it if you see it, and these shots give the television a sense of intimidation. Now further ring imagery appears on the clock, which we cut to as the phone starts to ring. In both versions, it's the character's mother's calling them, which then leads into the TV starting up. Katie ends up unplugging this in the US version, which then extends the scene and takes it to upstairs. We see a reflection in the screen with Samara behind her, and then catch water dripping from under the door as she goes upstairs. All of this wasn't present in the original, with the water of course linking in with Samara's death. Now in the room we get some really subtle things that you'd only really notice if you slowed down the footage. Let's play that again, slowed down. So as you can see, there's several images from the tape that are difficult to pick up with the naked eye. This is something that appears in both deaths caused by Samara, with it happening to Noah just before he's killed too. Now just before it happens, we get a shot of the well, which they do something really cool with throughout the film. Every time it pops up in the movie, Samara's a little closer to the screen, building to her eventually crawling out it in the final act. Now from here we cut to Aiden drawing a ring, which in the end is revealed to be a sun. This is something that he constantly draws throughout the film, and we later see as he has several drawings lined out where it gets bigger and bigger. Eventually this forms into a giant ring like what Samara saw in the well, showing how this curse could have affected him throughout the movie. These subtle bits of iconography also appear in this scene beyond the drawings, and we can see that his teacher has little horses on her shirt. When Rachel walks along beside the window, we can also see a little board with horses on it too, and looking back at Aiden's drawings, he's created several rings. Now Rachel, not really being there for her son, adds to the theme of motherhood that keeps popping up. You have to remember that back in the 90s and early noughties, being a single mother wasn't as accepted as it is today. It was certainly a taboo subject, lots of kids had a difficult time with it, and though it is accepted more now, it wasn't as much back then. Now, due to her job, she never really got to be a mother to Aiden, and thus he turned to his cousin Katie.
I know that Aiden recently lost his cousin.
Yes, and I'm doing what I can to find him some good daycare.
No, that's not what I meant. By all means, take your time. I know they were very close.
Rachel and Aiden are really distant, with the latter just referring to her by her first name. In the end, she embraces Samara's corpse, and does this all to save these two lost children, which cements her as a mother. These two kids, they haven't really had one, but in this final act, she's seen as saving them both. Now this separation is also clearly pushing them apart, and we see some of the drawings that Aiden's done of his cousin Katie. These show her body lying in the ground, with her even being underwater like what happens with Samara. Later we see some of the psychic photographs Samara did, and there's one especially that riffs on what the drawings are like here. We find out that Aiden drew them the week before she died, and this could be because of two things. The first is that Katie told him about the call, and that she only had 7 days left to live. The second is it shows that he has somewhat ESP abilities, which sort of links in with the original movie, in that both the kid and his dad usually had the powers, with that also being what helped cause the divide between the two. Due to his abilities, he'd shut himself off from his son, whereas Noah just doesn't think he's mature enough to be a father. Aiden very much had Katie as his only lifeline, and we even see in his room how he has a picture above his bed signed by her. These scenes paint out the divide between the two, with Rachel looking at her son through the mirror to symbolically show their separation. In the original, after the intro, we cut to Reiko interviewing students about the tape before she came home to her son, who she'd left in the house by himself. In both, the pair then attend the cousin's wake, with the remake having Aiden getting dressed on his own, showing his independence. Looking at the lampshade, we can also see black circular rings on it, and Rachel's top also has a girl dancing in the middle of a black circle. This is clearly a ballet dancer, however, it could also be a little nod to Samara being stuck in the well. Now in both versions, the son ends up going to their cousin's room, whilst the girl's mother discusses how they found the body. I love how this is solely told to us in flashbacks, and it kinda builds dread throughout the film over what the attack looks like. The entire movie builds towards that final scene, with us getting hints towards it laced throughout the films. Now in both versions, the son sees his cousin's legs running up the stairs, but this apparition gets more sinister further into the movie. How the son watches the tape is guided by one of two things, with Ringu building off the back of this haunting vision. In the original, it's Tomoko's ghost who apparently tells him to watch it, whereas in the remake, he does it off his own back. Personally, I always took Tomoko as being Sadako, whereas here they're trying to sell us the idea that she is one of the good guys. With Aiden, we see as he catches something in the reflection of the TV, whereas in the original, the horror's more implied. Now outside in both, the protagonist interviews some of the students, and is that Adam? That's Adam Brody, that? This scene appears in both versions, with the students talking about how their classmates also died the same time the cousin did. Rachel eventually goes and gets her son, and we see a ring-like mirror positioned above her head. Discovering a scrap album, we see all the people in it have their faces scribbled out, which is a new motif they made for the American version. This of course ties in with the distorted faces in the photographs, however it also possibly foreshadows Samara's long black hair covering her face. Developing the photos, we see as they chronicle the trip and show when the group ended up having their faces distorted. Rachel then starts to investigate the death, and we see that two died in a car accident. This is a bit of a nod to the original, as we had a scene where two of the students were found dead in their car. All of them were surrounded by screens and reflective surfaces, which is what Samara used as a gateway to get out. There was originally going to be a scene where we also saw one dying in a motorcycle accident, where Samara would have killed him by emerging from his helmet visor. Travelling up to the cabin, we get a shot of rain running down the window, foreshadowing the water that will later run down Noah's TV. Here we see the sign for the Shelter Mountain Inn, which gets a slight update at the end of the film. Around the hour 24 mark, Rachel and Noah pass by it, and we can see that it says closed until further notice. This was because it turned out the manager watched the tape, and his death caused the place to get shut down. As she walks in the reception, we see a clock on the wall with 2 rings of course being used as the faces. Here she discovers a tape which is amongst stuff like your Sherlock Holmes Revisited, Scent of a Woman, all of which will be getting breakdowns soon, and Gordon Pond. Just give me the tape that kills me, please. None of those. Now there's also Chud on the top, which is about cannibalistic humanoid underdwellers that rise from the sewers to kill people. There's also Rage to Kill, and these 2 last ones might have been used as little clues. Now in the middle we have a tape slanted like how it is in the original, but in that it calls out to Reiko, whereas here it doesn't. Passing by the red tree on the hill, this becomes prominent later on, and the tape itself has several things in it that pop up throughout the film. There's of course the ring that becomes the well lid, and then the red blood in the water which foreshadows the horse's death. Next we cut to a chair which looks like the one Samara sat in when we see the interviews that were carried out on her. Next there's black hair, her mother's combing her in the mirror, which itself is circular to play off the ring motif. We also have her father standing in a window and a fly moving across the screen that later comes out of it. This is to give the idea Samara can climb out of it too, with the cliff also being what her mother jumps off of. Now in the original, they sort of changed the character, and in that she was a psychic who predicted the eruption of a volcano. Her name was Shizuku Yamaura, and she was actually based on Shizuku Mifune. This was a real person from the early 20th century who used to give psychic readings to people in the 1900s. Accused of being a liar, this destroyed her career and she took her own life after the accusations. Next we see a strand of hair coming out of her mouth, which Rachel herself pulls out later in the film. Cut of the tree burning and then a nail getting pressed into a nail, which we can't really show because YouTube's turned into demonetizing everything unless you're a really big content creator that doxes people who try and criticize you. Also, off topic, I heard if you watch a Sniper Wolf video, you get a call that says 7 days, and then she shows up to your house and doxes you through the Ring camera. Anyway, as we learn in the well, Samara's fingernails came off from trying to climb out of it, which this nail being removed obviously ties back to. There's also a horse's eye and a ladder against a wall, which Rachel ends up later walking under. This is obviously a sign of bad luck, and the entire thing's like an early A24 student film. We see horses also washed up on the shore, and lastly catch the well before the static plays. Cut to Rachel's eye, which then starts to dilate, again creating this ring effect with us getting the sole focus on that. Also, Rachel is called Rachel Keller, which I don't know, I always thought that was a Friends reference. Now the look in these scenes is really striking, with production designer Tom Duffield looking at the work of Andrew Wyeth to create the film's look. After getting the phone call, Rachel heads back home, which is where we start to get the countdown of the days. In the Japanese original, they just used dates, but here we have this constant ticking clock to tell us time's running out. Aiden ends up going to school, and I love how the bus ads got Fraser and Seinfeld on it. Ah, the early noughties, really takes you back. Now here he bumps into his father, which is played almost exactly the same as how it is in the original. There's this real disconnect from the two, with Ringu being linked in with his psychic abilities. Rachel has reached out to him because he's an expert on video recordings, whereas in the original he was a professor at a university. In both he's now dating a student, with the American version having them sort of rekindling their relationship. We actually see Rachel wearing a Kirkland University top at this point and discover that his new girlfriend's going there too. When she comes in, we can see a t-shirt has the school on it, showing how he picked up both women from the same place. Dirty. Now, both have him watching the tape, while Rachel goes outside and stands on the balcony. We see her looking about and catch a woman leaving a child inside the room, metaphorically showing the separation between mothers and kids. In another apartment, we see a ring-shaped thing on TV before seeing a Japanese program playing on another. This is of course a nod to the original country of origin, and this is also followed up by a reference to a different sort of thriller. Here we catch a man in a wheelchair with a broken leg, and also some binoculars resting on the windowsill. This is a little visual nod to Alfred Hitchcock's Rear Window, in which James Stewart's character looks into the windows of his neighbours. On the screen, the man's watching a race play out, and in Rear Window he broke his leg when he was photographing one. Now in the original, Ryuji didn't actually get a call at this point, which was explained further in the novel. This was because only those close to Samara got one, which is why the people in the cabin were the only ones to get the message. The American remake, it plays it a bit differently, with her getting an answer machine message that she ends up deleting. Was probably telling her to like the video, and though Noah's skeptical, he then starts to believe it. At this point, Rachel makes a copy of the tape, which is what in the end saves her life. I will talk about the true meaning behind both endings later on, but passing on the curse is the only way to save yourself. Now, the remake has a scene that I actually think improves on the original, as we have Noah basically explaining how videotapes and tracking works. It's a nice bit of info dump that kind of talks about the science behind it and how tracking can also be used to unearth some hidden clues. We also see a ring-shaped object behind Rachel, and I swear, I'll stop pointing them out. Just except for that one outside where we see the manhole cover. It looks like a fucking ring.
Oh, no, not the beast! Not the beast! Ah!
Bloody turning a Ryan Airy. Now cut across to the mental institution where we see Katie's friend being escorted through the corridors. They have a sheet blocking her from the TV, and this is actually a nod to the Ring 2 in which the cousin's friend was holed up in an asylum. Like what we have here, she was convinced to leave her room due to a sheet being put up, and this would stop her from seeing the TV. Here she passes by it okay, whereas in that things went wild with Samara launching a psychic attack to her and all the patients. Also, Rachel, yeah, her earrings are like rings, and earrings has the word ring. Now, using professional equipment at work, Rachel's able to adjust the tracking. Here she spots the Moscow Island lighthouse, which in real life is the Yakina Head one. This was picked due to its eerie location and also because it's supposed to be haunted by a previous lighthouse keeper. Looking it up online, we also see Samara's mother, who's wearing black amongst the other islanders. Learning she hosts a horse show, we then get a brief glimpse at Brian Cox's character. Now again, she differs from the original, as in that Sadako's mother was in fact a psychic. Performing a reading one day, she was accused of being a fraud, and then Sadako psychically killed the journalist who did it, which caused attention to turn to her. Realizing how dangerous she was, her dad ended up killing her, which was expanded upon in the movie Ringu. Now that paints Sadako out in a sympathetic light, whereas the American version just shows she's bad at the bone. She was deliberately wanting to hurt people, whereas Ringu had much more of that tragic backstory. Now, Samara's attacks completely plagued the island, with her killing all the horses there due to them annoying her. In the photo, we then see her mother Anna's head, which Rachel circles with a black ring. Now, we discover that this caused Anna to take her own life, which was also made worse by hallucinations brought on by Samara. While looking this up, Rachel scribbles out her face, and we see Noah's distorted one on a monitor at her shop.
You're gonna die.
Whoa, spoilers, love. And his face in the footage makes him realise the curse could be real. With Rachel, we then get the hair scene, which shows the pressure Samara is starting to put on her. Around the room, we get a strong focus on water too, with both the jug and glass getting attention given to them. In the window behind her, we also see it rushing down before it then starts to drip directly out the telephone. At this point, we see Samara in a chair, which is when we get a flash of her time being studied. Grabbing Rachel's arm, this leaves a burn, which in the original happened when we saw visions of the backstory with her mother. Waking up, we catch Aiden watching the tape, with it ending showing Samara getting further out the well. Now this moment is a big deviation from the original, as in that this happened while Reiko and Yoichi went out to her father's. In the end, he actually played a major part because she left her son with him when they went out to Sadako's. After discovering he had to make a copy, she ended up driving out to her dad's with a VCR player and also a blank tape. This implied that she was going to ask her father to watch it, and this would end up sparing his grandson. We discovered in the sequel that he indeed saw it himself, and the theme of what you do for your family was cemented in his sacrifice. This is a big change up from what happens in the American version, with them originally having a new character that we'll talk about later on. Now we see the copy get thrown under the sofa, with the text saying that being similar to what's in the American version. Cut to day 6, and we see Katie's notepad with drawings on the chair, horses and a ring. Aiden's left looking for his mother, while the pair set out looking for Samara's origins. Noah heads out looking for Anna, whilst Rachel heads out on the ferry, which is when we see the horse jumping over the side. The way Samara's attack worked is that it psychically scared them to the point they didn't want to be on the island, and thus they ended up running into the sea. We get a shot where it runs through the ferry, and we hold on a car window covered in raindrops, highlighting Samara's control. The name of the boat is also the Quinault, which itself has the ties to horses. Just after the boat turns, we also get the ring flash on screen for a split second, which can only really be caught if you slow down the footage. Now Noah heads out to the asylum and we catch a fly crawling on the door as he breaks in. He sees some electrical nodes hanging out of a box, one of which was tied to the hair Rachel pulled out her mouth. These themselves look like rings, with it being a circle within a circle. On the island we then get a shot of the lighthouse and the beach where the horses drown before cutting to the ranch. Standing under the window, we then get the same angle to where Samara's dad stood at in the tape. The barns in the field, they're completely empty, with Brian Cox painting out an isolated man hiding a dark secret. Weirdly, he played William Stryker in X-Men 2 the year after, whose son Jason also put images in people's heads. Now in the expanded lore, we learned what happened with her, and Samara's real mother was held captive in a basement where she was assaulted by a priest. Samara was born and then adopted by Anna and her husband Richard, but the trauma of her early life manifested into her powers. Spotting Anna's mirror, this lets her know this is the place, but her dad denies it ever being the case. However, outside we also have a child's swing and Rachel pulls out a drawing Aiden made which lines up. Samara's face is further scribbled up, again foreshadowing the hair being draped over it. With Noah we watch as he goes through the records and sees some notes with Japanese characters calling back to the source material. I always found these moments to kind of be like the X-Files, where we have characters actually investigating paranormal things and trying to put explanations to them. In the thermophotography we also see dinosaur skeletons, which may link in with the toys that Aiden has in his room. Now cut to a doctor's office and we get a further focus on the time counting down, with Rachel now just having 1 day left. This itself has a ring around the center, with circles also being on the doctor's cardigan. Learning that everyone on the island was affected by the visions, this island somewhat kept the outside world safe from her. However, she was taken to the mainland at Iola, which is where she was studied and experimented on. Learning her dad Richard watched a tape of this, Noah heads out to try and stop Rachel from getting close to him. We see her entering the home and can also catch a Japanese canvas hanging up on the wall. Appearing inside the mirror, this creates a ring around Rachel, which appears like it's closing in on her. Samara too is featured in this as well, with her standing closer to the camera to showcase what's to come. Rachel discovers a file and then sees a centipede in it, which crawls away like how the one on the tape did. We see that Richard took the tape of his daughter, with the writing on that being the same as the file. Rachel plays this, and then we watch Samara in a room for hours, with a clock again looking like, you know what it is. Now, we discover that she never sleeps, which is one of the final things that Aiden and Richard says about the character.
She never sleeps.
She never sleeps.
We also see the thermophotography with a horse in a ring like sun being imprinted onto one. Pressing this onto carbon paper is how she put it under the film, with the videotape curse being born from that. The name Samara also refers to the story Appointment in Samara, which is about a man who meets death in a marketplace before fleeing to the town. Taking his own life, Richard does it using a bathtub, which is similar to the watery grave that Samara was sentenced to. They then discover that she was kept in the barn, with her room only being accessible by a ladder. This is of course the one that appeared in the tape, and we see models of horses dotted about it too. Horses are even in the wallpaper, which itself has their heads printed on it. Finding the tree at Shelter Mountain burned into the wall, this then takes them all the way back to the cabin. Going underneath it, they then discover the well, which as we know was where Samara's body was. In the original, they actually tried to empty the water out, which led to more tension as the sun started to go down. Reiko actually swapped places due to tiredness, whereas here Rachel gets knocked in by the TV. Now blink and you'll miss a moment, yep, blink and you'll miss it. We actually see Samara appear on it as it slides down. Here she sees what happened with her, with it being Anna in the remake who pushes her down the well. In the original, it was of course her father, but they changed it here to have Rachel saving her to be a sort of reverse of it. This is all to do with mothers of course, and her body's then exhumed, with it seeming like this is what breaks the curse. Finally this young girl can rest, but as we learn, she wanted to be out there and now the tape's being spread. However, Rachel learns to be closer to Aiden.
Sometimes children yell or cry or draw pictures.
And this brings things full circle from the start when Rachel refused to look at Aiden's.
Miss Keller, I'm bothered by these drawings.
Listen, I appreciate your concern, but my son lost his best friend 3 nights ago. He's just trying to deal with it.
Back at Katie's old house, we see Noah pick him up, and finally the family are ready to be together. Look, they're holding hands and stuff, it's wonderful. And then Rachel showers and we see water washing away, which is meant to give the idea that the curse is broken too. It's the perfect place to fade out and give us a happy ending. But wait, there's more! Realizing Aiden's mark hasn't faded, it only did for Rachel because her time had passed. Cut to Noah using a magnifying glass, which itself looks like a black ring. He also then picks up his coffee cup, which too leaves a ring right on a newspaper. Now let's pause the frame for a second and zoom in on the guy's face, and you might recognize that as being Chris Cooper. This guy's a really famous actor who's been in a number of different films, and that ranges from the Bourne franchise to American Beauty. But why, Paul? Why is this guy's face used in a newspaper article when he doesn't appear in the film? Well, that's because there were 2 big deleted scenes involving the actor that were cut from the film. If we look at the news report, we can see how he kidnapped a girl, assaulted and then killed her, which had him locked up for several decades. In the film, Rachel was going to be investigating this because he said he'd found God and was now getting paroled. What Rachel was going to do was going to get Aiden to copy the tape and then give it to his character so that he'd take the curse. This would be a way in which they could kill someone bad, clear Aiden of the curse, and use it as a weapon on one of the worst people imaginable. These moments were cut because they slowed down the pace, and instead we just get Chris's face in this brief scene. Kind of agree too, as I think it's a way better ending to close out what happens here with Samara climbing out the TV to claim her next victim. I love how Rachel rings them throughout, and that phone plays in the background, which itself was of course one of Samara's calling cards. This scene, yeah, it's just one of those ones that's going to stick with you forever, and I think it's one of the most memorable in movie history. Just the way the movie lures you into a false sense of security and then pulls the rug out, it's an incredibly chilling scare that I think's going to just stick with you. I love the way she moves and kind of glitches about the room, dripping water on the floor and carrying that static effect. The Japanese version is incredible too, with them reversing the footage so it seems more unnatural. We also had that final eye shot with the actor behind it cutting their eyelashes off to seem more imposing. Either way, it's one of the best ways you could end a movie like this, with us finally getting the scare that they've been teasing throughout. Rachel discovers his body, whereas in the Japanese version when Reiko arrives, she learns that the characters have already been dead for a while. In that he was found by his girlfriend Maya, whereas here Rachel leaves and then sees his going up in the lift. Lets her just discover him, nice of her, but this is just to stop people asking questions about the tape. The less that know the better, as this will make other people investigate it just like how she did. Now, as I mentioned before, the Japanese version has her getting her dad to see the son's copy, whereas here we don't know who watched it next. We see her looking at the tape under the sofa, whereas in the Japanese version it's pointed at by a spirit of someone who appears in it. Now after Rachel makes sure Aiden presses the tape in, he says,
"It's going to keep going, isn't it?"
Cutting out of the static, we once more end with brief flashes of it, implying that we the viewers are gonna be the next victim. Now Rachel herself has very much become like Samara in that she doesn't really care about who she kills next. All she cares about is passing on the virus of the tape without really caring about who it's gonna harm. That's very much what Samara was doing as well, and she's just attacking strangers and ending their lives. They weren't the people who caused the tragedy to happen to her, but in the end they became a victim of it. That's also what Rachel's doing too, with these unsuspecting people being pulled into it. It's a dark way to close out the film, and we end on a nihilistic final scene in both versions. And that closes out some of my favourite horrors of all time, with the original Ringu still remaining one of the best. I absolutely love the active characters we have here that go out searching things instead of sitting around waiting to get killed. This is such a good film that massively changed horror, and Samara and Sadako both became icons in their own right. Aided by Hans Zimmer's score, this is one of the most unnerving horrors from my childhood, and I hope you've had a good time going back through it. Also, shoutouts to the channel Alexander Palm, as the guy put together a compilation of the side-by-side stuff that we then added the background and logos to, but still, it's his edit, so I wouldn't really just want to jack it without giving him credit. Now if you've enjoyed the video, then please hit the thumbs up button, and if you want to see these breakdowns early, then please hit the join button. For just 99 cents and 99 pence a month, you'll get audio versions of these early, the edited ones too, and early access to our podcast across the Spoilerverse, and basically any video we've done in advance that doesn't break embargo. Huge thank you to all the members who've signed up so far. Honestly, it really means the world to me, and it just means that videos like this can get made and we can focus on talking about the classics. Now if you want something else to watch, then please check out our breakdown of Halloween, which will be linked on screen right now. We go over all the creepy details in it and things you might not know, so definitely head over there right after this. With that out of the way, huge thank you for clicking this. I've been Paul, and I'll see you next time. You take care, don't listen to that phone ring, and make sure you subscribe, otherwise you'll be dead in 7 days. Because Sniper Wolf will show up to your house and climb out the TV. Anyway, thank you for watching this, I'll see you next time, bye.